What's up, everybody? This is Jared with Hunt Nashville. Hope you're having a pleasant today. We took a little hiatus. If you're listening to this in sequence, I think this is like podcast number 35, maybe 34. If you're not and you've already listened to all the other ones and wondering where we've been, hi, we're back. Kevin and I took a few month break off the podcast, just trying to regroup, get busy with life, work, family, all that kind of stuff. And we are back now. We have 4 episodes already recorded, ready to go over the next month or so. So we're excited to put those out. We've had a really good time. Just to catch you up, we had our first Hunt Nashville Writers Round. That went really, really, really well. Had a sold-out crowd at the listening room here in Nashville. And had a great time. Josh Matheny, Alyssa Stans Weaver, Brian White, and Carrie Barlow were the writers on the first one around. And it went really well. We all had a great time, got to talk some hunting stories, got to hang out, really get great crowd. So we're going to be doing that again here sometime this winter. We're going to try to make it like a once a quarter sort of thing. Just get together, hang out with some good writers, play some good music, talk about hunting, bring a little bit of the outdoors in down near downtown Nashville and Music Row. So for everyone that came out to that, thank you very much. For everybody who is interested in coming out to the next one, we'll be posting stuff on our social media, mainly Instagram, about that, and we'll probably let you know on the podcast as well, assuming we put one out right before it happens. This week, we have Nick Gagnon. Nick is a video editor. He lives out in LA. He actually works on American Ninja Warrior. If you guys watch that show at all, of course you do, because it's badass. Nick is one of the editors over there, or was at the time of this recording, so I'm assuming he still is. Nick and I met via social media, like a lot of our guests do. This is our first kind of Skype-typed call, so I apologize for the audio. I'm still working out the kinks and trying to do remote podcasts with people who are across the country, so bear with us. This one's going to be a little bit different sound quality-wise, but I promise we'll get it better on the next one. But Nick started a podcast, getting back to the point, Nick started a podcast called Adult Onset Hunting, where he started hunting in his adulthood, kind of took it up and followed the process all the way through learning how to hunt, getting his hunter safety course, buying a firearm, booking a hunt, and actually going on it and harvesting an animal. So it's very, very cool. You can check him out on iTunes and all the other places you listen to podcasts, I'm sure. And really cool story. It was nice to sit down and talk to Nick. It's nice to get a fresh perspective on hunting from someone who is maybe an adult and doesn't necessarily have all those straight childlike wonder about hunting, but can approach it from someone who's a little more sensible and responsible. And I don't know. It was a very interesting perspective that you don't get very often. It seems you're getting it more often than you used to now, but still pretty rare to have someone, in their 30s coming along and just picking up hunting, especially someone with a family or coming up having a family. So with that said, if you like this podcast and you want to hear more like it, make sure you click that subscribe button. Give us a rating if you so please. You can follow us on social media, Hunt Nashville on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. Really appreciate everyone's comments, everybody listening, and I'm going to stop rambling and let you get on with it. Here we go. How do you pronounce your last name?
Gagnon.
Gagnon. Okay. See, I'm like from the South. I was going to say Gagnon because I try to take everything very literally.
People say Gagnon. It's technically Gagnon, but nobody says
Gagnon.
it that way. No one, not even my family. So
that sounds much fancier, though.
It does, and my wife and my sister-in-law are very upset that we have not used that. They were like, "Wait, it could sound that pretty, but no, Gagnon is what we say."
Well, I guess it'd be like the best place to start is at the beginning. I don't know how we got hooked up on Instagram. I don't know if I found you or you found me or somewhere in between, but
I remember seeing this. I think it popped up on my feed somehow, and I was like, "Adult Onset Dog." I was like, "That's really cool." Like, I was like, "I wonder what that is." So I clicked and I started scrolling through your Instagram, and then I was like, "Well, holy crap!" He's like, "This is ideally what this is what we're spending a lot of time talking about is like hunter recruitment and like guys getting into it that didn't grow up doing it like we did, and so and so I kind of thought then I'm like, well, really need to touch base with this guy and see what he's all about and see what he's into. So kind of tell everyone, at least our listeners, what you do, how you got started in it, and kind of your background.
So what I do is I edit reality TV for a living here in Los Angeles, California. But to tell you how it started, I'd probably have to take you back to Tucson, Arizona, where I'm from. Many, many years ago, my grandfather ran a gun range in Tucson called Jensen's, and just almost as a form of babysitting, he would take my brother and I to the range, and we'd do hunter safety courses just like for fun,
Right.
And he was big into hunting, and still to this day, I'm not quite sure why he never took us. I guess we probably didn't show interest, but we hung out at the gun range all the time, and then you get older, you get into high school, and you start playing sports and chasing girls, and then you're not really concentrating on anything else, and
right.
And then before you know it, I'm 22 years old and I moved to Los Angeles, and then the hunting dream is, it's not even a thought. Yeah, right. I'm not even thinking about it. It's a dream I don't even know I have yet. But after about a decade in Los Angeles, when my career really started to take off, and I kind of got more comfortable and life became, a little more stable, I kind of had this calling back to hunting. And I will say a catalyst is not to pimp out another podcast on yours, but a big thing for me was Meat Eater. My brother sent me an episode randomly because we both listened to Joe Rogan. Right. I think Steve Rinella was a guest.
Mm-hmm.
We went down that rabbit hole, and I was just fascinated by his stories. And I started feeling myself wanting to have my own stories. I was just like, wow, it sounds like he's having so much fun. How can I get into this? And that's where it began.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's it's funny, Steve. I mean, and Joe Rogan also, but like Steve has an interesting way of communicating that I think definitely lends itself to attracting the attention of kind of our generation of like, folks that, I'm from the deep South. I'm from South Mississippi originally. And I live in Nashville now. So I'm not out of the South by any stretch of the imagination, but like I'm conservative in some parts, but kind of socially progressive when it comes to some other things. And I think until Rinella, there really wasn't a very loud voice that kind of spoke to that sort of thing. In the hunting world, it was always, and I have the utmost respect for all the guys that did outdoor television for years and years and the big hunters, and I've met a lot of those guys and a lot of those heroes. But I think there was a voice missing for a long time in our demographic, and it seems like Rinella just fitted at the right time, which is why. And he's just a wealth of knowledge as well, so he just blew up at the time. So it's funny to hear that that's kind of what got you in re-interested into the whole thing.
Yeah, and it's funny you say that because from Arizona, which is by all accounts a more conservative place, and then I live in Los Angeles now, which is maybe as progressive as it gets.
Yes.
Some might think, and it was very interesting when my brother sent me that Meat Eater podcast, and I thought, one, how the hell did my brother find a hunting podcast? And two, the fact that we both just really enjoyed it, and it was a connection, almost like a bridge from where we're at to the hunting world, which may not have existed otherwise.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and it's that's I guess the great thing and the terrible thing about the internet in general is like it can be such a very vile place and such a place of such vitriol, and everyone hates each other. but it can also help you discover stuff like that, something as simple as listening to a podcast can spark what will hopefully be a lifelong passion and something that changes your lifestyle for the rest of your life.
Absolutely. And I think it will. And it's interesting for me my goal was to start off, because when you watch Meat Eater and you listen to any of the hunting podcasts or watch any of the hunting shows, of which there are many on even Netflix and stuff now, they all start at just, guys are sighting in on animals. And I just kept thinking, like, how did they get there? And my limited knowledge from childhood was just like, okay, you started a hunter safety course. I know that. And so I just went right to hunter safety course. And I figured I got to document this, at least for myself, just because this is crazy that I'm getting into hunting. And I feel like other people may have had that same thought, like, yeah, okay, this hunting seems beautiful and amazing, but how do I get there? And so that's what I was trying to accomplish with my stuff. But then on Instagram, when I started the page, a lot of people like you and even some other hunting podcasts and other hunting pages were very nice and accepting and hit me up. And it was a pleasant experience for me to step into the hunting world.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, I think people are starting to realize more and more that it's not a dying, that's the wrong word and too strong of a word. It's the hunting demographic and the amount of people that are partaking has shrunken significantly over the last 60 years. But if you want to talk about, an actual large shrinking number over the last 25 years or so. And really over the last 4 years, we've seen quite a steady decrease. It went from in the 15 million range in 2011 to the 13 million range in 2014. So it's been a fairly significant dive in hunter participation in general. And so I think a big part of that is obviously urbanization of America in general, that, you don't have to hunt to get your meat. I mean, it's just not required anymore. It's difficult, incredibly difficult. If you live in a city like LA, it's not easy to go do it. It's not like you can drive. I mean, even in a city like Nashville, the wildlife management area I turkey hunt on is 15 minutes from my house, and I'm in the Nashville city limits. I mean, it's 20,000 acres. I can just go and walk, And so there's a lot of cities around the country that aren't like that, obviously. And so removing those barriers to entry, I think, is really, really important for whether you've gone on your first hunt, or I've been hunting since I was, 6 years old. And that's just all I've ever known. It's just normal for me. And so trying to remove those barriers and be more accepting of the way people decide to go about it and do it is huge. And so it's nice to see someone like yourself who's just decided to get into it, in adulthood, and be like, you know what, I'm going to start doing this. And it's refreshing for someone like me to see that does a lot of time speaking to people in the hunting industry and people in the wildlife management sector and, state agencies and stuff. It's nice to see, like, well, there's guys in LA that are like literally just going and buying a gun and figuring it out themselves. Like, not really a whole lot of guidance other than Google.
No, Google and listening to like the podcasts like yours and just other people's, and just taking what I can from all of them. And yeah, I knew that being in LA was going to be a different perspective, a perspective that maybe didn't exist in the hunting world. And that was also another thing I looked forward to as I started my project. But they did not make it easy. They really did not. And I think it's a double-edged sword. Sometimes the rules that they've set in place and the manner in which they make you go about things is what makes hunting great, because we have a template and we have set things and rules to abide by. But then it's also, if you are not either willing to take the time to learn them or aware of them at all, it is really tough to get into.
Yeah, I'm sure. Well, and I'm sure it's different as well as it's not something as simple as picking up scrapbooking or deciding that you're going to start rollerblading. You know what I mean? Like, you're dealing with life and death and danger, and it's not a safe sport. It can be very safe, but that's kind of part of the fun of it, is it's a little bit dangerous. And I'm not talking about gun safety. I'm just talking about it's a little bit dangerous to go walk out in the woods and just go off by yourself, and you get bit by a snake, you can fall and break your ankle. I mean, there's tons of stuff that can happen, and that's half the fun of the whole thing. But so to take it on, I mean, I don't know. I'm very impressed by just like to be able to say, you know what, so I'm going to take this thing on and I'm going to grab it by the horns and figure it out.
Yeah. Well, I was lucky that I wasn't, I'm not intimidated by guns because, I grew up around them, and I had a good amount of knowledge, at least of handling and stuff like that. So maybe there's somebody out there who's even newer than me who never held a gun before and got into it. But at least in LA, not many gun clubs, there might be a few here and there, but you're not exactly rolling around, like in Arizona, you see people in basketball shorts with a pistol on their side, and it's just a regular Tuesday. But here it would be, it would not be welcomed or normal. So, even just going out and getting a gun, my wife was like, well, how do you get it from, a Bass Pro Shop where I bought it to home? And what happens if this and that? And it's like, well, I got to look that shit up, sorry, I don't know if you cuss on your podcast.
Oh, absolutely. You're completely open.
I'm like, I got to look it up and figure it out. And you feel silly Googling, like, where do I store my ammo if I have my gun in my car? And again, that's just another little, nugget of living in LA and trying to hunt. But yeah, it wasn't normal. And it's almost like when I'm at work, it's not exactly water cooler talk. There's nobody at work who I'm going to go up to and be like, hey man, I was hunting last weekend. And when I took work off, because I did go on a hunt 2 weekends ago.
Yeah.
I think we spoke a little before. We may have even tried to get on this before, but
yeah, we did.
We work out better for you anyway. So
yeah, we need to cover that for sure. Well, that's interesting. You talk about the water cooler talk. I mean, who knows? Maybe you'll end up being the catalyst in your community group that's like everybody starts getting interested. You never know. I mean, there's been obviously a big push for organic and locally sourced meat and vegetables and all that over the last 5 to 10 years. So who knows, some of your friends, and they may have already started asking, have any of your friends been like, hey man, why don't you take me? Or how'd you start that or whatever?
It's funny when I first started taking the time off to hunt, I just was like, hey, I'm taking time off. I'm going up north. I didn't really say why, because I almost didn't want to say it because it's just so not normal where I'm at. I mean, I'm working in television, you know what I mean? You can't throw a rock without hitting a vegan, you know what I mean? In a lot of spaces. And I say that jokingly.
Yes.
But then at some point I was like, you know what? Like, it's not like anybody's going to judge me. Like, these are all intelligent people. And honestly, it was maybe more me trying to mask it. Because when I told people, when I came out and was like, hey, I'm going hunting, they were like, cool. And a few people were like, really, hunting? But nobody had a negative reaction to it at all. If anything, people were like, when I explained that I just wanted to go get some meat and harvest it myself, and they were all pretty susceptible to that, and they did ask questions that maybe open their mind a little. And now I'm just completely, when I got back from hunting, I told them how it went, and they were all pretty excited, and yeah, so maybe I did open their eyes a little.
Yeah, no, that definitely could be the case. You never know. You never know what the future might bring when that whole group of people. What is your first hunting experience as an adult? Was this it, or have you been before? Or?
This is it. No, this is it. The first time hunting. First time hunting ever.
Really? So you never did like shot squirrels with a BB gun when you were a kid or anything like that?
No, we may have we may have like gotten a dove when we were a kid,
right.
messing around off the record, in the backyard, but like nothing crazy. No. Right. Like I said, we just did the hunter safety courses just as probably a form of my grandfather babysitting, but this was my first hunt.
So what was your initial reaction? Because I hear, so you've, at this point, we'll go ahead and date this podcast. You've released one episode of your like going on your first hunt series. I listened through. obviously you haven't gotten a pig yet, so I don't know how the story ends. I'm assuming eventually you kill one, but you kind of left me on the cliffhanger.
Yes.
So what is your first experience? What's one of the things that sets out what's one of the things once you got into the hunt you weren't expecting, or it was a little bit different than what you had imagined?
Well, you're going to get the goods now, so I'm going to spoil it for you. Just in the interest of making your podcast interesting, I'm going to make mine less interesting. So one of the things that stood out to me, I guess on a base level, was we did a lot of driving. Like I expected, and this is just my personal hunt. Obviously, it doesn't have any, everybody's experience, I'm sure, is different, and especially with different animals. But I was going on a wild pig hunt, and we had to drive to a different ranch. Like the ranch that we stayed at with the outfitter was not the ranch we were hunting at. And then we were driving around in like a gator or an all-terrain vehicle, which I guess I imagine we do a little of, but like we didn't really do much hiking at all, which I expected. I had bought boots and stuff. But again, I mean, they didn't, it's not like on their website, they're like, we will do this, this, and this, and this is exactly how we'll do it. So I just had to over prepare, and we just ended up doing more driving than I thought. But, on this, because we got skunked the first day, we didn't see any pigs, which was kind of nice, because then I was like, okay, this isn't some canned hunt. You know what I mean? Like, we're going to have to earn this. And on the second day, we woke up, super early in the morning at 4:30 and went out, and sure enough, in these wheat fields, there was a group of pigs, and we went at it. And again, we were in the all-terrain, so I thought, like, all right, we see these pigs, we're going to flank them, try to get the wind in our face, and I can lay down in like the prone position or something. Right. And like I've practiced and shoot a pig unknowingly for as far as the pig goes. And then the guide is like, we're going right at them. And I'm like, what do you mean? And he's like, we're going directly at that group of pigs. And I'm like, well, they'll probably hear us. This is a loud vehicle. He's like, yep, they're going to hear us and they're going to run. And I'm going to stop and you're going to get out and shoot. And it's not like he was asking us, by the way. Right. And we rolled up to hunt in Priuses. Okay. Like he knew who he had in his vehicle.
He knew what he was getting himself into.
Yeah. But he just looked at us and was like, it's go time. So he stops the all-terrain vehicle on top. Like he flies over a few valleys, and just over another hill, the pigs are kind of starting to scatter. And me and my buddy got out, because there was two of us hunting. And my buddy Matt gets out, I get out. We both lock onto a pig, and they're probably about 25 yards away or so at that point. And I found one that wasn't moving and pulled the trigger, and that was that. One shot and it was down.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's so that probably wasn't the it sounds like it wasn't the super stalk sniper shot that you had built up in your head.
No, it was nothing that I expected, but it was perfect, for what it was, because I guess nothing's what you expect. It's always different when you're in there, but it was a great experience. And I actually, when you hear it, it sounds just as wild as I'm telling you. But what I won't leave out, to make myself sound great, is that I didn't know I shot it. I thought I missed clean.
Oh, wow.
I aimed at it. I didn't have, trigger fear or anything. Mm-hmm. I was very calm. I got out, I locked on, and I pulled the trigger, but it was high wheatgrass, and I didn't really see it anymore. And so I thought I missed clean. So I started aiming, like looking for another pig, and the guides were like, yo, no, you shot it. It's down. But it was all happening so fast. So that's a funny little story about that.
Yeah, a lot of it's just reaction time. Well, that happens to the best of all of us. I can't count the amount of times I've shot a deer, especially turkeys. Of course, generally turkeys flop, but the amount of times I've shot a deer and just looked over at whoever I'm hunting with and been like, did I get it? Like, I just have no clue, because the smoke's clearing and you're looking through a scope, and if it ran off, you can't see it. And if it fell, you can't see it. And like, It's you walk up and like, holy shit, we actually killed the thing. Like it's like
Okay,
you should
so
never be surprised you hit something, but in the same right, it's like you need that little bit of reassurance. And so your first animal or your 100th, trust me, it'll happen again.
okay, good. Yeah, it was an odd side effect of the adrenaline that I did not expect for sure, but I'm glad it's normal.
Right. So you got the pig, you walk up on it. What was your have you dealt with dead animals before as far as like livestock or anything?
No, 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 not at all. So that's a yeah, it's a great question because I did have a lot of feelings when I walked up on the animal, and honestly, when I walked up, when you put your scope on the animal, you're you're focused on like I'm seeing this live animal and it's beautiful and we're in this beautiful setting and completely in the wild, and you pull the trigger and moments later you walk up and it's not an animal anymore.
Yes.
Like that was the craziest thing to me is like what I put my sight on was a wild pig. What I walked up on was now like it was already food.
Right.
And that transition happened so fast. And I guess I didn't really expect it. Maybe I just,
right.
Wasn't really aware of how fast those consequences would transfer. But I was also hit with when I walked up on it, like a heavy sense of hypocrisy for all of the meat I had eaten prior.
Mm-hmm.
Like I was just like, man, like looking at this animal and I knew that meat was earned. And so it immediately made me feel like every single piece of meat I had eaten prior was just not.
That In-N-Out burger didn't taste as good as you thought it did.
Yeah. That's kind of what I thought. Is like retroactively, I was like yelling at myself, like, man, this is what you should have been doing. So that was probably the biggest thing when I walked up.
Did you have any short of other than hypocrisy? Did you have any other emotions, or was it just kind of like, all right, here's the food, let's get to work?
No, it was pretty matter of fact. Like I obviously had like a great respect for that animal because I was, I'm existing in its space and when you take something's life, like you can't deny that, so I just kind of looked down, and you'll hear it in the audio because they were capturing audio when I walked up on it. I just kind of like, they were asking me to do a grip and grin and stuff. And I was just like, no, I'm good. Like, I just want to take this in and like, just look at this animal, take in the moment and finish processing it, because it wasn't just like okay, I killed it, great, let's move on. I really wanted to let it set in, just to respect the moment almost and respect the animal. And that probably sounds corny, but it was true.
No, not at all. It's I've done a decent amount of filmed hunts for television or whatever, and the that's always one aspect that I don't love about that it's kind of necessary for that sort of thing. But like when I'm hunting by myself, it's like you kill the deer and get out of the stand or whatever, and walk up to it, and like that moment by yourself, like you're kind of glad no one's there, kind of over your shoulder, because there's a feeling of absolute hypocrisy. I felt it and feel it every time. We don't sustain nearly enough off the wild game that we kill. I kill, for the last 4 or 5 years, I kill 1 or 2 deer a year, which could probably last us a good ways, but that will easily last us the whole year because we only eat it once a week or so. I mean, we just don't eat it a ton. We don't eat it as much as we should.
Right.
And so there's that feeling, but there's also like a reverence is the best word I've found to describe. It's not guilt and it's not sadness, but it's like a reverence you feel when you walk up to an animal after you've taken its life, no matter what kind it is. The bigger it is, the more reverence I tend to feel. Just honestly, that seems to be how it generally works. But it's like, you've killed this thing. I mean, this thing was alive seconds ago. I mean, it was alive and it was eating and it was drinking and it was living its merry life, and you killed it. And there's no getting around that. And as a hunter, you have to wrestle with those. You have to wrestle with those emotions again, which is what it's part of the whole process. If I didn't have those emotions, if I didn't feel that, it wouldn't be nearly as much. It wouldn't be nearly as enjoyable and nearly as fulfilling to go through if I didn't have to deal with that stuff.
No, I think you're absolutely right. And and you know, it's when I'm listening to the shows or the podcasts I listen to, you know, they talk about, you know, I kind of knew how people had seen their kills and how they felt about their kills, but you know, until you do it, you know, you can't really prepare yourself for that. It was a beautiful moment, just aesthetically. You know, it was like the sun was coming up over the mountains, and you know, it was super orange, and the wheat fields were just shimmering. So, you know, all around it was a pretty incredible moment that I for sure will not forget.
That's awesome, man. That sounds like a very cool first experience.
It was, yeah. I feel very lucky, and yeah, I mean, I definitely, you know, people keep asking me like, so are you going to do it again? And it's like, well, yeah, I'm this far in, and you know, not to segue for you, but I when I cooked my meat just Saturday night, I have, you know, few times have I felt as proud cooking, maybe never, but man, when I cooked that meat and I ate it, I was just like, this. I will continue to do this until I can't, for sure.
No, there's a connection to your food that gardening is the only other close thing that gets there, but it's not quite there because the tomatoes don't have babies and they don't live and breathe. So it's a little bit easier to slice into a cucumber than it is into a piece of venison or a piece of pork that you killed. But there's very few things that will make you respect animals and respect wildlife and have a sense of self-respect as well. As like, I did that. Like, I pulled that off. Like, I was able to harvest this animal. I was able to clean it and get it in the freezer and cook it and feed it my family. And this is going to sustain my family through the rest of the day, you know?
Yeah. And by no means do I want to paint myself as a mountain man or anything. Like, I paid a guy. Yes, I will. But, you know, part of the journey was paying a guide good money to put myself in the position to make it happen. Because, you know, where I'm at, that's just the way I saw that I could, you know, it was feasible at that point. It was like, okay, if I pay a guide, one, like there's a point of no return. Like, the money spent, I'm going to do this. And two, you know, I don't have a ton of time to take vacations and stuff. And so it was like, you know, getting a guide was kind of almost a sure way to make sure somebody put me in front of an animal. So, you know, it's not like I went out there alone and you know, stalked and found it myself. And, you know, there may be plenty of people who can do that. I just want to make sure I don't, you know, paint it that I'm some mountain man.
No, absolutely not. Well, and I think there's absolutely no shame in going out on a guided hunt, especially one earlier on where you're kind of inexperienced and you're figuring things out. And, you know, again, it's like, you know, I had the benefit of my dad and my grandfather and mentors when I was a kid taking me turkey hunting and deer hunting, where they kind of showed me the ropes and just the general stuff that you take for granted when you get older. But it's like, oh, I mean, checking the wind and how to walk and what side of the ridge to walk on, and just like simple stuff like that when you're older, it's just second nature. And so I think there's absolutely no shame in that, because that guide, one, can help you get in front of an animal quicker, which I think honestly is probably not a bad idea for a lot of first-time hunters, because your chance of repeating the same process are much higher because you actually harvested an animal. I mean, I started deer hunting when I was I started going with people when I was 8. I never really deer hunted. We ran dogs in Mississippi and still do it, but I started going with people. I never shot a gun. And I started actually hunting myself when I was 13 or 14. And
man, that's young.
Never got a chance to kill a deer until I was in my season when I was 15. I killed my first doe with a bow here in Tennessee. It's after we moved up here. And so I cannot imagine, if I had not grown up with that like love for the outdoors, if it took me that long to kill an animal, I just wouldn't have done it. I wouldn't have hunted that long. I would have given up, because then I meant like, well, screw all this. Like, I'll just go to the store, or I'll go buy some bison and feel like I ate wild game, you know, like, and I couldn't blame anybody for doing that, because it's like we said before, it's difficult. It's hard to do. It's not an easy thing to get into. And so going with a guide you should feel absolutely no shame about that whatsoever.
Yeah, no, I definitely don't feel, you know, I definitely don't feel shameful. And if anything, I knew I was paying to learn. Like I wasn't just paying to get in front of an animal. We were probably, I don't know if you've taken any of your kids hunting yet.
Yes, this year actually the first time.
Okay, so I imagine my guide felt somewhat like you because the whole time we were just asking questions. I wanted to get the info out of him, and he was, very nice. He wasn't the most talkative person, but if you asked him a question, he'd answer. And we asked him plenty, just because, like you and my guide, you guys have forgotten stuff that that I'm far from learning. So for me, I knew I needed to accelerate the process because I am 33 years old. And for me, that was part of it. Yeah.
No, I think that's a great way to go. And, it's just, I don't know. I think it's really nice. Like here, I tell most people, as far as like, we get a lot of musicians and guys that are in their 30s and 40s that, as the wild game meat and all organic, locally grown movement kind of started, it was probably much further. Well, not much further. It was further behind getting started in the South than it was in LA, obviously. But as that started, we started getting a lot of questions and taking a ton of people hunting over the last 4 or 5 years. I mean, really, a lot of guys have gotten into hunting because Kevin and I have just gone out of our way to make sure that they got to go. Maybe they went squirrel hunting when they were a kid, and then they got busy with family and work and writing songs or whatever and haven't gotten to do it. And so in the process, we've been allowed to impart some of that knowledge of like, I don't think about those things unless I go with someone new. Like when I go turkey hunting by myself, I'm in autopilot. Like if I had to consider myself one thing, it would be a turkey hunter. And like, that's what I love to do. I spend the most time every year turkey hunting. That's my favorite. That's my passion as far as hunting goes. I really only deer hunt a couple times a year. I don't really go that much. But when I go turkey hunting by myself, I'm an autopilot. I just, I get out of the truck. I know where all my stuff is. I know all my calls are in the right pockets. I know where I'm going to go before I step out of the foot. I know how far to walk before I locate a bird. I know what to look for. That's just kind of because I've done it for so long, and I'm no master turkey hunter by any stretch of the imagination. I kill 1 or 2 birds a year, but it's just I've habitual over time have learned through making many, many mistakes. But when I take someone new and I'm like, I walk up and I grab a crow call out of my vest. He's like, "What's that?" And I'm like, "Well, it's a crow call." Like, duh. But for him, he's like, what is that thing? You know what I mean? And then it's always that first time, and it's usually a crow call or an owl call. He's like, "What's that?" I'm reminded. I'm like, oh, I get to like teach someone all this stuff. Like, this is really, it's so much more exciting for me because I'm like, oh yeah, well, this is this and this is this, and you're looking for scratches, and they're going to point in this direction if they're going traveling this direction, and like all that other stuff. So I think it's a great way to go. And it's a good tip for guys who are thinking about getting into hunting to consider going on a guided hunt instead of trying to take it on themselves.
Absolutely. And I think it's, that's something that can be said for guys like you. When you have all this knowledge, why not share it? It's like bestow it upon as many people as possible. Cause they always say, I was talking to another guide on one of my podcasts, and he was saying that, teaching is almost more fun for him than like going hunting on his own, because, he really gets to break it down and remember, why he does it. So,
yeah, absolutely. Well, and I went turkey hunting with a guy I just met on Instagram this year, and it was a sporting goods company. And nice. I went hunting with him like 3 times at his farm here in just south of Nashville. And he didn't take a gun any of the times. And I was like, "Why are you not taking a gun?" He's like, "You're shooting." And I'm like, "Okay." And I'm like, I'm some big bad turkey hunter. And we get in there and I'm learning stuff like literally every time we go out. I'm like, "Oh, I didn't know that. Oh man, I can't believe that bird did that when you did that thing like that I've never even thought of doing." But it's just, he's in his 50s and he's been doing it since he was a little boy. And it's just like, he's like, duh, like, why wouldn't you think? But I think I'm like some amazing turkey hunter. I've been doing this for, 15 or 20 years. And he's like, "No, this is the way you do this." So even guys like me, I'm like, I go out with someone way more experienced, and I'm like I don't even want to do. I didn't pull a call out at all on that whole those trips. Like I just put them on my vest. Like I'm just going to sit here and watch what you do.
We'll see. You still have plenty to learn, which is terrifying for me because you have plenty to learn. But it's interesting you talk about turkeys like that, because the same way you talk about turkeys and like your face lights up. Both the guides, we had 2 different guides on 2 days, and both of them were just turkey fiends. Like they talked about turkeys like, I don't know, they were stoked. Their faces lit up. So turkeys has got to be something I got to get into.
Elk hunters don't like the comparison, but turkey hunting and elk hunting is very akin to each other. Obviously, elk is a 1,500-pound animal and a turkey is a 23-pound animal, but they're very akin to each other, where the excitement of trying to trick a wild animal into thinking that you're something that you're not is incredibly elusive, is incredibly exciting for me. And it doesn't work 80% of the time. But when it does work, it's just like, I don't know. It's like you have discovered some new element that no one has ever seen before when you can trick a turkey into coming into a call and he walks right in not knowing what's going on. So I highly recommend getting into it. We try to tell, like in the South, at least what we have to hunt down here is I tell people to hunt doves first, because you can go on a dove hunt, you can talk, you can hang out with your buddies. It's very social. It's not real. You don't have to be quiet. You don't have to have that much skill. You got to be able to shoot a shotgun. You have to be able to shoot a shotgun well to kill any, but you can shoot all you want to. You just may not kill anything. And then pigs, because pigs are, their sense of smell is amazing, but their eyesight's not great. There's an abundance of them where they are, generally speaking. And then turkeys is my third, because it's like you can get up, you can walk around, it's very active, you can call, you can talk quietly while you're walking around with a buddy, you're never really sitting still for very long. And then whitetails is like everybody that jumps into hunting and they're like, I want to go shoot a deer. I'm like, don't start with deer, because you'll quit. I mean, you will quit hunting before you begin, because it's hard unless you get lucky or go with someone that's like, sit in the stand at 7:45, 3 does are going to walk past because they do it every morning. Like, then you can kill one. But if you were just to go off on public land and try to kill a whitetail, generally speaking, you would quit hunting before you got done with that season. I guarantee you just stop, because it's very difficult. And so I think you started at a good middle ground.
Yeah, it was a perfect, I don't know if it's good to talk about it like this, but it was like a perfect sized animal. It was like, It wasn't an undertaking like a deer. And honestly, I couldn't even imagine how much meat a deer is, because when I got the meat back, we had sent our pigs right to the butcher because we didn't want to ruin the meat. Sure as hell, we wanted to make sure we got it back edible. So when we got it back, I could not believe how much meat it was.
That's awesome.
Blown away.
Did you field dress your first animal?
We did it in the field. Yeah.
Okay,
so he basically taught us as he did.
Good. Okay.
Awesome. And I was.
Did you have to get your hands bloody at all?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah. No, and we wanted to make sure to. And honestly, that was maybe more than killing the animal and anything else in the hunt was maybe something I was more dubious of.
Mm-hmm.
But it's interesting once the animal, like I said, like once it became food and he ran, the pig's belly up and I'm holding its legs and he's running the knife and he's showing me where he's doing it. It just became a process and not really a big deal at all. And I think I even said in the field, I was like, if my wife could see me not squirming at this, at this blood and ripping the guts out, she'd be so impressed. But
oh, dude, I had to give blood not long to get a new life insurance policy, and I put it off for like 3 months till finally the insurance company called me and was like, okay, we're gonna have to cancel this process if you don't come in next week. And so my wife had to call and make an appointment at the doctor. And I went in and she was like giving me a pep talk. She knows how I am with needles, like in my own blood. And she, every time I go through this with shots or IVs or taking blood, she's like, how can you be, well, if you're listening to this podcast, you're okay with a little bit of gruesomeness. How can you be elbows deep into a deer gutting it and it not bother you at all? But you can't have a little tiny needle prick your arm. And I'm like, I don't get it. Trust me, I don't understand it. But so I feel you, and my wife is so very impressed when I actually do it anyways.
Yeah. And by impressed, I mean, she'd just roll her eyes. But no, she'd probably crack up. But I when he was doing it, I couldn't believe how little I actually cared. I was like, oh, this is fascinating. And my guide, to his credit, he was efficient. I mean, I couldn't believe how fast he did it. I mean, he's done a million pigs, but man, did it go by quick. And then, before you know it, we're, like scooping the blood out, lifting it up, throwing it back in the all terrain. And then, again, when he got it back to the outfitter and, they're hanging it upside down and skinning it. I mean, efficient is an understatement. It was pretty cool to watch him do it. And, I mean, I tried to get my hands as dirty as possible, but also my guide wasn't like I said, he'd answer a question if you asked it, but he wasn't exactly
just take care of it himself.
Yeah, he wasn't like, come here and let me slow down this process to show you guys how to do this. He was ready to probably take a nap or something. So
right. Well, and it just becomes second nature after you've gutted 100 animals. It doesn't become mundane, and it's not fun, but it's not boring. It just becomes like, it's coming. It's like every time I shoot a deer, especially turkeys are easy to clean, but every time I shoot a deer, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna climb out of my stand. Here's when it really starts. Like that was the fun part and the easy part. Like now I've got to skin this thing. And about 6 years ago, I in the South, how it generally works is like you kill your deer, you field dress it, so you gut it basically and get it. You put a bag of ice in the body cavity, then you take it to a processor, and they hang it up and skin it, quarter it out, debone it, grind up burger, cut your steaks up from you. It all comes neatly packaged in butcher paper and cellophane.
Yeah,
and it costs $100 to do, and it's great. You get about 50 to 60 pounds off of a decent sized whitetail. And so you may get more off of a larger one, less off a smaller one. But about 6 years ago, I felt like I was feeling like a disconnect with deer hunting. I don't know. I don't know if I was getting bored with it or if it was just becoming business as usual. Probably at that point, I'd killed 50 deer. And so it was just becoming kind of normal. And so I started doing everything myself. So killed them, field dress them, get them home, hang them up in the backyard, which my neighbors love because I live in the suburbs of Nashville.
Oh, sure.
And then skin it, quarter it, take it inside, debone it. My wife got me a burger grinder and a dehydrator and a shrink wrap machine for not a shrink wrap, but a air sealer for vacuum sealer. I don't know what I'm talking about, for Christmas one year. And so I just started doing everything myself. So it literally never leaves my sight. I started dry aging on my venison about 4 years ago, which makes a huge difference, believe it or not. And so that whole process, like the more you can involve yourself in it, like the pork you got back, I'm sure tastes amazing. And it tastes amazing because you were involved in the process.
Yep.
It's like if you went and bought a wild pig at the store, it just wouldn't be the same. It would be the same meat, and it would probably to any normal person taste exactly the same. But to you, it's just got that little something different that just like gives you a little bit more boost.
Yeah, and exactly what you said. I think it could add more, like had I gutted it completely myself and skinned it completely myself, I'm sure that meat would taste even better. And it's cool to still have things to look forward to, like the build up of the hunt, at least for me and my podcast and my journey and the documentation of it, there was like this release when the hunt happened. But it is nice to still have those little things to look forward to, which is, getting even more dirty and I maybe making the mistakes that people have made 100 times. Like I haven't made them yet. So I'm looking forward to even doing that. But the guide probably did think we were hilarious because we're so stoked. We were like, that's the entrance wound and that's the exit wound. And he was just like looking at us like, yeah, I know. And then he would kind of remember like, oh, these guys don't know what the hell they're talking about. And he'd be like, yes. So what happened is, but we were very excitable for sure.
That's awesome, man. No, I'm super stoked for you. That's a really cool experience. So what, do you have any plans on what you want to try to undertake next as far as hunting is concerned?
I don't yet. I put in for deer in Arizona and got pulled for later this year.
Awesome.
Back in Tucson, which would be great to, close the hunting story full circle.
Is it mule deer, coos? What's in Tucson area?
I think it's whitetail.
Okay.
Yeah. So the problem is not a problem, but the only thing standing in my way is that my wife is due to have our first child in about 4 weeks.
You
So
should have really thought this through, man.
yes, yes, from your mouth to my wife's ears. So so that's the only thing. We'll see how that goes. So I'm not really sure, but I would love to do turkey. And it's funny, my brother, the four of us went on my hunt. Me, my friend Matt Alamina, who hunted with me, my brother, and my friend Greg came on the hunt just to go with us. They weren't really, they're like, yeah, we don't need to pull the trigger or or anything like that. But afterwards, they had kind of heard the other guides talk about turkey hunting, and they were very interested. So now there may be a couple more turkey hunters in the world.
That's awesome.
And
take all we can get.
Exactly. And maybe we'll get into some of that with a group of us, and maybe they can go and I can just kind of hang back and see the process and stuff.
Yeah. Have you considered doing any small game hunting?
Yeah, I just don't know what we do out here, like I know in the South, you guys probably do squirrels and stuff. And
squirrels, rabbit. I mean, I don't do a ton of small game hunting anymore. I used to, and I really enjoy it when I do go out, but squirrels, rabbits, any kind of bird hunting. I mean, as long as it's in season, obviously, but, yeah, small game's a good thing to go. You'll learn, I probably learned the most about hunting in general as like a grand concept, hunting squirrels. It sounds so stupid.
No, I believe it.
It seems like they're tree rats is all they are, but you learn so much about squirrels. Are very much like deer. If you're going to stalk a deer, you have to be very quiet. You have to kind of pay attention to your wind. You have to pay attention to what direction you approach. You have to be very stealthy when you're moving around. It doesn't seem that way when you see them running around in the park, but for some reason, the ones in the wild are a little bit more wily than the ones in the park are, obviously. So if I had to make a recommendation for something like that you wanted to try to undertake something where it wasn't, it's not a big cost. You need a shotgun is basically all you need, and a box of shells, and obviously a license. But if you could find somewhere close by where you could go do something like that, honestly, just a day walking around in the woods with a buddy and a shotgun can teach you things that you would be amazed that transfer over into turkey and deer hunting, that transfer over immensely, because you get to make a lot of those mistakes of like breaking branches and going the wrong way around a ridge, or, stepping off and slipping on a rock because you weren't really paying attention, which we all do. But you're making those mistakes with a much smaller consequence. You're going to scare off a squirrel. You're not going to scare off the buck of a lifetime, or a Tom with a 12-inch beard. So it would be a good thing to go do if you could find the time and find somewhere to go do it. I guess that would be the other problem.
Yeah, I imagine finding somewhere out here would be the problem, but that's very well put. And I think, that maybe that would be a good way to get in the field alone, or with a friend on our own.
Yeah.
To stalk some animals and maybe learn that way. Nobody's mentioned that to me yet. Nobody's pushed small game on me yet, so that's good.
Yeah, I think it's not everyone, but a lot of people kind of focus on the, as to pull a Ranella term, be charismatic megafauna. They kind of focus on the longer the eyelashes, the more appealing of the animal it is to hunt. Deer and elk and cervid species being that everyone loves to hunt them because they're beautiful and large, and you get a large bounty of meat off of them. But I think there's a lot to be said for making those mistakes when the consequences are not near as dire. You're not going to cry if you walk around a tree and a squirrel sitting and looking at you and he runs off before you get a shot. You might cry if you spend an entire day stalking a deer and it runs off when you get up close to it. I don't know if I've ever actually started weeping, but I've gotten very close a few times. And in the South, it's not as much stalking. We do a ton of still hunting, which is just sitting stand hunting. We send a daggum tree stand for 5 hours and hope something walks by. And so I've missed because I wasn't paying attention, or I've had deer win me when they're within range. more times than I can count. And that's a whole lot more upsetting than if a squirrel decided to bust out on me because I broke a twig.
I could only imagine. Speaking of the South, my wife is from New Orleans, so
Okay,
there
yeah.
may be some hunting there in my future. Like, okay, honey,
Yeah.
let's bring the kid home for to see the family, and
Yeah.
maybe I can get out there and mix it up.
There's plenty of stuff to kill down in the South Louisiana.
Yeah, they hunt a lot.
They hunt a lot. Yeah, I'm from South Mississippi. About if you were to go an hour and a half east of New Orleans, that's where I'm from originally, and so it's there's plenty of things that need to be killed down there.
Yeah. So you know I may be down south near you sooner than later, but for now, it's going to be weathering the parental storm. So
Yeah.
it was kind of perfect timing. My friend who was on the trip with me, he has a baby due the same exact day. So for us, it was kind of our our last hoorah as non-parents.
Right. Well, it throws a definite wrench into the gears, and it's something to work around for sure. I didn't realize how much it was going to affect my hunting time until I hunted too much when we first got married. I mean, I've been married for 13 years now, and I was gone. Deer season, I was hunting 3 days a week. I'd take a day off during the work week, and then I'd hunt Saturday and Sunday, and I'd work long hours the other 4 days to make up for the day that I took off, basically.
Right.
And so we got married and started having kids, and it definitely eats into that time. But on the flip side, I took my boys turkey hunting for the first time this year. And that was an adventure all into itself. But it did kind of show me that, like, I have an excuse to go hunting now, because I'm like, well, the boy really wants to go. He's been begging me all week, babe. Like, I'm just gonna, I don't know what else to do. He's gonna be so upset if we don't go hunting Saturday morning, So you just got to get through that whole period, and you should.
Yeah. Yeah, well, there's 6 years of that period, but I'm going to pocket that one, and I'm going to use it much later down the road.
Remember it, yeah. Well, and it's it's prioritizing things. You may have to drop off some other things that you have hobbies in your life if you're really passionate about pursuing the art of hunting. That I don't have any other hobbies. Like I work, I spend time with my family, and I go hunting when I can. Like I've dropped off everything. I used to tour and play music, and all that is gone now because
nice.
I prioritize, and hunting landed above music.
Yeah, hunting is landing above a lot of my other hobbies for sure. So,
Yeah.
and mostly just because I realize how much time it takes. I realize how far I am behind. So yeah, I'm definitely all in. So.
Absolutely. Well, Nick, is there anything you wanted to hit while we're on here?
No. Yeah, just again, thank you for hitting me up all those months ago and welcoming me into the welcoming a newbie into the hunting world. It's cool to have guys like you who work on big projects to drop me a line and say hey, and it's been very cool, and I guess welcoming is all I can say so far. So yeah, I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, keep doing what you're doing, man. I think there's a niche out there for people as hunters and outdoorsmen, and as men especially. We have so much damn pride that nobody wants to admit that they don't know something, and they'd rather just go out and figure it out and make a bunch of freaking mistakes. So I think that you just saying, you know what, I've never done this. I'm in my 30s and I've decided to pick this thing up, and here's the process. I think there's a definite space out there for that, because I don't see a whole lot of people doing that. It's either I've been hunting forever and I know everything, or they just won't say anything at all. So
I appreciate it. Yeah, I'm nothing if not humble, and I'm sure there's much more much more of me to be humbled when I get out there in the woods. That you guys will probably just laugh at, because you know the process. So
oh well, I can't wait to hear the stories, because all they'll do is remind me of all those times I did those same things.
yes, and yeah, I look forward to those times. It's cool to look forward to like something enough to look forward to messing up. So
absolutely. Well, where's a good place? Where can they find your podcast, and where can they find you online?
Oh, thank you. So yeah, if you want to go to iTunes, you can find the Adult Onset Hunting podcast. And on Instagram, it is Adult Onset Hunting, and you can find me there. And if you want to listen, download, subscribe, that'd be great. Appreciate it.
Awesome. All right, man. Well, I appreciate you sitting down with us, and I guess until next time, we'll talk to y'all later.
All right, Jared. Thanks again.
Thanks, man.